Well, hello, Sean. It's great to see you, and thanks very much for doing this tea break interview with me today. To start with, please briefly tell us who you are and what you do, and how you were involved with Orchestras Live in the past.
Well, great to see you too, Stuart, and thanks so much for inviting me along for this conversation. So, yes, I'm Sean. My current role is as a vice principal at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. I'm particularly responsible in terms of overseeing the lifelong learning. So, it's got a lot to do with the work that the Guildhall does beyond the core higher education, undergraduate, postgraduate training, although obviously I interface with that as well. Um, and I'm particularly tied in also to the innovation and engagement work, which I can talk about more later. Um, I started out very much as a composer and creative music practitioner, actually, and did a postgraduate at Guildhall many years ago. And not long after that, I got to know you, Stuart, originally through your work with the Firebird Trust, and then working as a creative music leader with the what was then called the Eastern Orchestral Board and is now Orchestras Live.
You mentioned yourself as a musician. Um, you know, how how did you become involved in music in the first place? What was your inspiration, and what was your route into it?
How long have you got? It's it, well, to start at the beginning, as it were. I was on a sort of a relatively um, uh, a pathway that you would sort of recognize in that I did my piano lessons and did my grade exams and as a flute player through local teachers and my schools. But a turning point for me was when I got a what was then called a junior exhibitioner place at Trinity College of Music, as it then was, which was situated in the heart of London. I grew up in the suburbs of London in Surrey, uh, and then got into Trinity when I was 13. And I would say I wouldn't have been able to do it without support from the local authority, Sutton and Cheam local authority, which I know is a very live discussion now in terms of support available to young people who
Mm.
have a passion for music or the arts and need that support to progress to the next stage. My parents were real musical enthusiasts, but not musicians themselves, so they looked to get the support from elsewhere. So Trinity was a big turning point for me, not only in terms of going up to London every week, which is a massive thing, and having my lessons and playing in ensembles and orchestras as a pianist and a flute player, but also just because of there was something around Trinity in particular that at that time. It was led by someone called Stuart, who was very supportive of young people exploring their own engagement with music. And thinking back, that's where I really started to get interested in composition, in improvisation. This was in the late 70s and early 80s. And I think that made me realize I wanted to do music. I didn't know what as. I wasn't sure I was good enough because obviously being in that sort of environment, you were looking at performers who were exceptional, even at that stage. I also knew I wasn't necessarily geared up to being in a sort of specialist conservatoire context, going on into higher education. So, long story short, I had, this is often the story, a very supportive music teacher at school, at my secondary school, and he really nudged me and sort of literally side by side worked with me to encourage me to find the right sort of course at university, which in the end took me to what was then called Bath College of Higher Education. It's now Bath Spa University College. And again, it was just the right environment for me. It was a great mix of performance, composition, and the history and analysis and the musicianship side. And it was a combination of that course and the musical environment which kept me going. Again, I didn't quite know what I was going to do at the end. I was already playing into schools work. I was playing in bands as well as in the more formal classical route. I think I was really diversifying then as a musician and picking instruments up like the guitar, and I was playing drums and I was playing in jazz, free improvisation. But again, quite knowing what to do with that was a bit of a question. And I sort of felt my way staying in Bath the year after graduating. a key turning point for me, or another key turning point, but I think the ultimate turning point for me was hearing about a very new course at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama called Performance and Communication Skills, set up by someone called Peter Renshaw, in partnership with Peter Weigold, who's a composer. And it was a year-long postgraduate diploma course geared to sort of training you up, for want of a better term, or preparing you and to think about and then use your skills as a musician in society. That's how it was framed. So it was an extraordinary year of being in it was like a company, an ensemble of musicians, so about 15 or 16 of us who came from very different backgrounds. Some of us more formally trained, like myself, but others who really had learned by ear, through the jazz or the community music or non-European music. We had musicians from all sorts of culture on it, and we worked together as a whole ensemble and in smaller groups, devising our own music, working with theatre, working with dancers, working with visual art, going out into schools and community settings, and leading projects basically. And that's where I found my feet. And I felt a natural affinity to being a creative leader, a facilitator, working in all sorts of contexts. The thing that got me most was creating in collaborative environments,
Yeah.
where you sparked ideas, you brought ideas along, but equally you were sparked by people in the room.